Welcome back to the Gunn Show VIP edition, my friends. Now, today is a special occasion, and the reason why it's a special occasion is I'm actually the guest today. And if you have been following along with the Gunn Show VIP edition, you've heard me talk to this young man named Christian. He's always behind the scenes, answering some questions, giving us some bad audio. No, we're not doing that, of course. He actually gives us great audio. We're bad at guessing as a part of that game, but he's giving us advice on how to make manufacturing more fun, more sexy. We are humanizing it here. That's the point of this show is to humanize manufacturing. And I've been kind of saying some weird things from time to time on the show. I popped out saying I surfed on top of a car one time and played, in a Fear Factor show and things like that. And every time I say something, Christian pulls me aside after the show and he's like, dude, where did that come from? So I think he has a few questions for me. So Christian, who will be meeting for the first time today, if we could switch over to him. We got Benjamin behind the scenes, but Christian, who we get to see in person, as he's my Howard Stern on the show normally, and I have a guest, he is now asking me questions today, which I think will be fun because some of it might be about manufacturing. I have no idea what he's going to ask me today. He might ask me about my crazy stuff. He might ask me about how I got here. He might ask me about the future because I can be a fortune teller from time to time as well. No, I can't do that either. We'll see what he asks me. Christian, thank you for doing this. I'm excited to do this. I know that you've had a lot of curiosities about, well, my last 45 years of life and kind of these weird things that I say from time to time, right? So I'm excited to share with you because I find you an interesting person coming from Ohio, hosting a podcast about bourbon and your experience as well. So getting to do this with you and then showcase you to the audience watching as well, I think that's incredibly fun. So we'll get to do more of the behind the scenes. And when people go, who's that Christian guy over there? It keeps answering all those questions. We now have a face and a host. Welcome back to the Gunn Show, my friends. This is the VIP edition.
Cool. Yeah, it's an absolute honor to be here. Super exciting to be able to produce your podcast for the last however many episodes. I think we're probably on 15 maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe 100.
Yeah,
who
knows?
Totally
who
sure,
knows when we'll release this one, right?
Yeah, or if it'll ever get released, we're going to find out. But yeah, I mean, I knew nothing about manufacturing coming into meeting you. I didn't know people in manufacturing could be so cool. So that's, I don't know if that's just you or it's everybody else, but you've had some really cool guests on. And I've noticed that they all share one thing in common, which is they all really seem to love what they do more than a lot of other people. And I think that's part of the creativity. But I think we could get into that later. So let's just start with you. Tell me about a young Tony Gunn.
Well, first,
start from the beginning.
Yeah, let me just say that's fascinating that you've already had that insight, and I can't wait to talk about that part also. And very well done, and way to lead me in. A young Tony Gunn. Dude, I grew up in the country, in the middle of nowhere, in a place which some people called Powhatan, but Powhatan, Virginia. And we had 10 acres of land, and there was about 1,000 acres with about 5 houses on it. So it really was country. And it was so much so that in my pursuit of professional soccer career as a young man, my dad made me or built me or constructed me a soccer field. So I actually had a full field in my backyard. Goals, wow. Everything. And we actually had fencing along those goals because as I was practicing, if I missed, instead of kicking it into the woods, it would just bounce right back to me. So if we ever had issue with one of our fields when I was training, we invited the entire team over to my house to practice there if we couldn't get a field elsewhere. So very country, very poor, didn't have a whole lot. And maybe I shouldn't say that if my mom and dad end up listening to this show, but we didn't have a whole lot, right? It was very basic. It was... I wouldn't get new clothes unless my grandparents bought it. A lot of my clothes would be secondhand from secondhand stores. Never traveled, never got to see a whole lot. It was basic. The most travel I did was out to Galax, Virginia to visit one set of grandparents or down to Raleigh, North Carolina to visit another set of grandparents.
Up until what age would you say?
Until I moved out.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't grow up with anything. In fact, my mindset was, and I did a lot of sports, much like yourself actually, with your MMA and fitness, and I know you're big into that. I did karate. I was a black belt at one time. Lots of soccer, lots of baseball, lots of basketball, won state championships and all this stuff. But soccer was my main go-to. And in my head, and I think my dad actually made the mistake of feeding this demon as well. I thought that if I was incredibly good at soccer, which probably was true if I was incredibly good at soccer, which maybe I wasn't that good, the school and grades didn't matter. And I took it that way. I actually graduated high school with a 1.26 GPA because I dropped out my junior year and worked as a lifeguard at the YMCA. Ended up going back, of course, so I graduated on time. I still have my high school diploma, but dropped out, graduated with a 1.26, and that's with my senior year when I started caring, where I had a 3.8 or something like that. But it was so bad because in my head, professional soccer was all I needed to see the world, to remove myself from this poor environment, to have more, to do all the things I wanted to do that I dreamt of. Soccer was that end goal for me.
So when did that dream die?
Oh, goodness gracious. I love how you phrased that one. Let's kind of not died still. I still wake up going, I can do this. 45 years old, I don't care. I could probably still do it. Right. Ronaldo's getting older. He's still playing, right? So at a very young age, I was a part of a relationship, and I had a child very, very young. I was 21 years old. And at that time, I was darn close, Christian, to making that professional level.
Were you really?
Yeah. My freshman year in college, at JUCO level, I was actually the 7th leading scorer in the nation at a JUCO level. So the reason I had to go to JUCO first was because of the grade point average I just told you about. And then I was recruited after 2 years where I was the MVP the second year, and 7th leading scorer in the nation the first year, to play at University of Maryland. And I, again, just didn't go to class and got kicked out for bad grades. So academic probation. So I got kicked out of that school. I was headed over to the University of Maryland. So I claimed that I was kicked out of that. I claim I was kicked out of 3 colleges, but that one, I never actually made it to that one. They just said, by the way, you can no longer come. And then I went to a church school for about 5 seconds. They kicked me out after a month. They're like, you don't abide by any of our rules, so you got to go. And I'm not that I'm a horrible person. I guess I just wasn't that good of a person at that time of my life. So I had a child at a young age, and I was real close to being at that professional level. I mean, we're talking practice squads, we're talking farm teams. It really was that level where they're looking at these players. And about 1998, 99 was around that time, right? And soccer, as glorious as it is globally, the U.S. wasn't paying a ton of money except to the big names that came in, right? Like the David Beckhams once they came in, that kind of thing. But the U.S., it wasn't a real financial security. And so the money that I was making at that time wasn't enough, and I needed to go to work. And so I did. And at first, I worked a door-to-door sales job selling you like coupons for Domino's, where $20 would get you like 20 free pizzas or something, or car washes, or things like. I was literally knocking on doors, and I was excellent at. I despised it, but I was excellent. I did so well that I would sell more than anyone else that was knocking on doors, and I would quit at about 3 hours into it and just go lay in a ditch for the next 5 hours and just like take a nap and stuff, listen to music, write hip hop songs, things like that, right? So I needed to find a real job, and I needed to find a job that had insurance without pre-existing conditions, because the young lady was already pregnant. So a lot of times with insurance, you have to have something come later in your life, and they'll insure it for you now because it's like just in case, right? Gotcha. But at that time, it existed. And it's rare to find places that offer pre-existing condition insurance, and this one place did. It was called Hoover and Strong, and it was a precious metals manufacturing facility. So gold, platinum, silver, all that cool stuff that people are wearing. And I went into work, and that had great insurance, and that was kind of how I started the manufacturing stuff. But that was also where the dream died. Right. I kept playing very heavily. I played co-ed soccer. Shoot, I mean, we traveled half of the country with a co-ed team we almost never lost. And half the players on that team were either ex-pros or striving to be. And the guys team I played on at 30 years old was number 3 in the nation. So the over 30 team I played on, the guys team that I played in Premier League from about 22 to 28 or so, people were getting pulled from that league to go play for the local farm team, for the pro teams, which were called the Richmond Kickers at that time. So people were getting pulled from the league I was in. It didn't really die until I realized I was old, right? There was always a dream.
You still play to this day, correct?
I can't. I tried during COVID, honestly, Christian. I tried. So I moved to Florida from Virginia around 2012 when my daughter was born. And up until I moved here, I was playing pretty heavily on very competitive teams. The one I mentioned was actually out of Washington, D.C., number 3 in the nation as an over 30 league. And then when I came down here, I needed to make friends. And the easiest way to make friends is join sports, or apparently sign up for a podcast, because you and Ben are awesome. So I'm making new friends all the time in different ways. but it was to make friends. And I could tell that I cared less and my skills were dwindling off, but occasionally I would try and the guys would be like, oh, that's why you were recruited. You know, they would laugh about it, right? And then I started traveling about 300 days a year all over the world. And the last season I signed up for was maybe, I don't know, 2015, 16, maybe around that time, 14 maybe. And I got to 2 games out of 15 games and wasted my money. I was like, I can't play anymore. Then COVID hit, and I was like, we're home. We're all home. I can play soccer again. Right. I signed up for a team, played 1 game, bought $200 pair of shoes, got all the gear. I limped. My daughter makes fun of me still. I limped for 2 weeks after playing that game. I was like, nope, I'm done. I am all the way done with soccer now, so I don't play anymore. I just talk about it.
So going back to your first job, what was that? Or did you start as a janitor? Did you start in manufacturing? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I did janitorial work while I was there as overtime. You know, there's a lot of folks these days that say that everyone wants easy money. You know, everyone sees the success at the end of a journey, but no one cares or discusses the hardship we all go through to get there. You know, we see all these social media posts about this influencer of some sort that has millions of followers or millions of dollars. Right. I mean, you got guests coming into Podcast Junkies all the time. I flip to their Instagram. There's really famous people coming in here. And it's
it's the end product that you're seeing.
Yeah, it's the inspiring end product. And everyone goes, I want to do that now, right? So to answer your question, I didn't have any manufacturing experience. I obviously didn't have a college degree, so I didn't know what I really wanted to do with my life. And the first job I had in there was kind of polishing. The first real position I had in there was this piece of there was this machine. It was a hydraulic press machine is what we call it. And just kind of imagine a circular piece of steel. And there's a whole bunch of different sizes of that circular piece, but you pop it into the machine spindle face, right? And when you push 2 buttons on either side, and it's for safety reasons that there's 2 buttons, a piece of plexiglass will come down to protect you against safety, and then this hole punch comes down and just smashes into a thin plate of whatever said precious metal was there, gold, platinum, silver, whatever it might be. So you're more or less making precious metal washers. So you punch the inside and outside, ID and OD. Okay. There's a flat plate. You punch the inside, or you punch the outside first, and then you have the small round pieces. There's a secondary operation. You switch things out, and you punch the inside of that same piece. So now you're making a washer in that way. And that was what I did for a few months. I would always race myself. I would say, okay, how many pieces did I get from this, and how quickly did I do it? You know, did I scrap anything? You know, it was always a game with myself.
So you liked it initially too?
Well, I was boring as crap. Honestly, it was so boring. But much like your mindset, I believe, we're going to try and figure out how to make the most fun out of anything we're in, right? And if I need to have this money, and if I need to have this insurance, and I'm bored out of my mind punching holes in something over and over, the redundancy, the monotony, let's make a game of it. How fast can I be? How many can I make? How many can I get more pieces out of this sheet of material than I did on the last sheet of material I got? And then on the nights and weekends, anytime they offered, I was with the cleanup crew, mopping, sweeping, you know, putting some sort of coating on the floor because it was, again, precious metals. And any scrap was so very important because it was also a refining plant. So we got to melt things down and create stuff as well. So any gold people would send us, any platinum, we could divide it up if it was kind of like a scrap piece or whatever, or if it was a solid piece, we could, you know, do whatever we wanted with it. I remember we did some gold for Australia one time, and it was 9-karat gold. You know, they wanted 9 carats, so we did it for them. You know, somebody wanted some Valentine's type gold, so we put a little bit of copper into the gold, which made it look pink. So it was a little bit colorful for Valentine's, right? So we could pretty much do whatever we wanted, and it was fascinating. It was fascinating so much so that one quick story for you before I talk too much and you ask me another question is National Geographic came through one time, and it was because a ship off the coast of Carolina had sunk with a bunch of gold in it decades and decades ago, right? Like probably during, I don't remember, but during like the pirates' time or something like that, right? When we didn't have the navigation we have now. And the gold was discovered. So they actually brought $10 million worth of gold brick into our facility. And you wouldn't imagine, or maybe you could, but you wouldn't imagine how heavy one gold brick, I mean, it is. Talk about trying to run out of a building with it. You can't do that. Not that there wasn't security all over the place, but theft was pretty much impossible. These bricks were so heavy, but they wanted us to melt down these bricks and create the dies to commemorate the ship. So we created coins out of this gold to commemorate the ship that sunk, and Discovery Channel did a whole thing on it, which is kind of neat.
That's very cool. Now, I imagine it's not that social of a job. I mean, day to day, you're kind of not really working with people, but you're really, really good at talking to people. So how did that happen? Was that something you were always good at? I know you said you were in sales, going door to door, and you were really good. So obviously, even at the beginning of your professional career, other than soccer, you were good at talking to people. So how did that happen?
I guess people are born with that, right? We have a lot of introverts that don't want to talk to people and have to really. I've talked to so many people where they go, I had the worst. Did you know, Christian, the worst fear of the most amount of people on this planet is public speaking and public nudity? Like,
I mean, I get the nudity part.
As sexy as you are, come on. But that's a thing. So people really have to work hard. I've had so many conversations now that I'm, interviewing people where they'll tell me stories about when they were in college and they had to truly focus on the courage for public speaking class because they knew in the business world they'd have to give some sort of talk to a group of people, right? And I've had people say that if they're reading from a document that they've prepared for, no issue. They can stand in front of people and read that document. But it's the creativity that goes along with it, right? So I don't know, maybe as a teenager I was a bit of a bullshitter because I didn't have a whole lot of money. I needed to figure things out. I've always talked a lot when requested, but I oftentimes won't talk to somebody unsolicited. You know what I mean? Like you and I talk a lot now, but I will stay silent for the longest time unless somebody's curious to know more because I'm also a curious person and I want to know about people. To answer the question though, I think I just talk a lot, honestly. I mean, my dad's in sales. He was always in sales. Being the leader of a soccer team requires people to talk. Public speaking in college was my easiest A, probably the only A I got. It's just a matter of, I think, applying conversation in a way that when someone finishes with the conversation, they feel like they've learned something or the time was valuable. There's a whole lot of people with chatter. Right? You turn on a TV and you're static or whatever. Back in the day, you're a young man. You might not know the static we had to put up with.
No, I'm not that young.
But there's a lot of chatter out there, and it's meaningless. And to be fair, I'm not real great at, hey, how's the weather? Hey, nice shirt. Hey, did you do something new with your hair?
That's not really real anyway. I mean,
right.
In a lot of ways. That's small talk. That's boring. I hate doing that. That's why I would rather play it risky with people and just get right into it.
Yeah.
Rather than just like warm up to them for X amount of weeks or days or hours, So
yeah, absolutely agree with you. That. Yeah, we definitely do. And you're great at that as well. I mean, truly, the first day we met, we're already diving in. And I think we can figure out who we like in our lives real quick that way, right?
Yep. So how long did it take for you from that first position to get into a position where you're more social and doing what you're really, really good at?
Well, to be fair, I never knew that I was good at manufacturing, the machining side of things, because we've already talked about school, and I think there's a large portion of audience out there when it comes to manufacturing that goes, oh, forget that. Forget engineering. I got to do numbers. So many people out there don't like numbers. I never made it past Algebra 1, I think. And I'm not stupid by any means, but I'm terrible in a classroom. So having something be put on a chalkboard for numbers, it never sat with me well. It's just not the way I learn. So evolving in this first company, this precious metals company, I needed more money. Ultimately, money was my drive at this time. Right? Currently, it's all about the love of an industry and inspiring others and wanting to be of service to people. My heart is currently all about service. And through time, chasing money, I realized that I'm happiest when I'm of service to others. But at this time, it was about money. How can I make more money? How can I, what's that machine over there? The one with the computer connected to it. Those guys make more money than me. How do I get to do that, right? And then how do I become a manager? And how do I become a part of these company improvement committees? And how do I learn these other things? It was about money. How can I make more money? So it was really just a few months, honestly. I'm a very driven person, and I need to have some sort of lifestyle that allows me to do things. I'm really bad at remaining stagnant. I like the creativity of doing and learning and being a part of that. So there was this older gentleman, and we talked about this in one of the podcasts, about the old man that's always in the corner with his cigarette or his coffee cup and, just raspy voice or whatever it might be, that has all the information, and you have to figure out how to learn from them, right? And it's a very respectful thing. You we don't bow in the U.S., but in metaphorical terms, it's allowing yourself the opportunity to really see this person as a mentor and allow them to be just that. And if they're willing to open up to you, then there's all sorts of beautiful lessons that can be learned. And I think that's something for every industry out there. If you guys out there want to learn something, just be open. Realize you don't know it all already. And certainly, even to this day, I'm learning something new, right? Every single day, everyone I meet, Christian, Ben included, my family members, everyone's a student and a teacher to everyone we meet. And it's up to us to decide at what point do we want to teach and what point do we want to learn. So it was pretty quick. And so I got with this young man. His name was Bill Sullivan. And I say young man out of respect, wise man, let's say. He was a couple years out of retirement, actually. He's in his 60s. And he taught me, and there's an audience out there that listens to this show that understands exactly what I'm about to say, but I'm going to try to describe it to you in a way, because you're not in manufacturing, that allows people outside of manufacturing to understand.
Closer. I'm getting closer.
You're getting real good at it, actually. So there's a computer screen, and in order to make the movement of these machines work, you have to put in certain code as you would code for anything in order to make it work. And these G codes and M codes will do certain radiuses and make certain linear and vertical and horizontal, all the movements, we call them XYZs, all that kind of stuff. And you put in the right code, and then this washer that I made in the beginning turns into a ring that you might have on your finger. So through this process, we've turned a piece of raw material into something that's actually in all the jewelry stores that you see. So I asked him to teach me the coding. So at this time, we were using floppy drives. If you remember those, the floppy drives were in the back, so codes couldn't be very long. And a lot of the things we did were on the screen, on the machine, in the moment when it came to changes. So good and bad for that. The good is that I learned how to code line-by-line programming, which is a lot of times a lot lost art modern times, because people are just using CAD CAM to do it, doing it on a computer screen, designing it all up, and then it posts all the code for you. In fact, AI is writing code at this point. But the idea to conceptualize what these numbers are going to do for me, that's the good part of it. To know later on in my life, when I started doing the CAD CAM programs that are out there, that I could look through the code and see if there were any mistakes, or if a machine did something wrong, I could look into the code and see where the mistake was and fix it. So what I also make jokes about a lot, even though I do consider myself at that time a high-quality machinist through my 12 years of machining, woodworking, precious metals, steels, things like that, I do make the joke because at a line-by-line program, you can very easily put a decimal in the wrong spot or a negative in the wrong spot, and you have to look it over and over again.
Which could be catastrophic, correct?
Yes, you can smash a cutting tool into a table, and we're talking thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even more depending on the crash. So I always make the joke, I've crashed that machine before, I've put the decimal in the wrong place, and I've made those mistakes. It's amazing. And once I became a manager and understand, I ended up being assistant manager of this department, ordering all the tools, company improvement committee, did some software called I Think software, which is like lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, but instead of having it on a board, it's actually automated, and you can see where the bottlenecks, whether it be financial bottlenecks or factory bottlenecks of some sort, you can see anything you want to see through this really intellectual mathematical software program, which again, I didn't get past Algebra 1, so how am I figuring all this stuff out? It's because hands-on, right? So that's the bad of it, and that's the good of it, but the ability to learn and to grow within manufacturing, I did start to enjoy, and it became less about money and more about the parts I was creating, the things that I was doing for an industry. I was working in the woodworking world for a little while and walking into a kitchen and going, I designed that, I made that. And we would do over $100,000 kitchens out in D.C. for some, famous people, and these kitchens were glorious. So I did eventually find a love for manufacturing, which ultimately, I think we'll get in this conversation to where we are today and where manufacturing has taken me around the world, and hopefully connect with an audience out there who also at 16, 17 didn't really know what they want to do in a professional world if their dream of athletics or music or whatever it might be.
Which is a lot of people's dreams.
So many
people.
Especially with social media being what it is right now. We see that end product and they go, I want to do that too. How can I do that? I want to be that athlete. I want to be that musician. How do I get there, right?
I did research for my next opportunity because I wanted to write a book. And I came across the statistic that 70% of small business owners want to fund their retirement through the sale of their business. when in fact only 20% of them actually had a saleable business. And it broke my heart, anticipating the fact that baby boomers, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and in fact it was a train. And so I really wanted to do something about that. So I wrote a book called Scaling the Exit. The purpose of the book was to articulate a strategy for small to medium-sized business owners to increase the value of their business to the extent that they could actually sell it and fund their retirement. And that was really the first iteration of what became EBITDA Growth Systems and our brand promise, which is to double the valuation of small, medium-sized businesses, specifically in terms of an exit, but double their valuation, or we give them their money back.
100%, yeah, and I think, like you said, you don't see the hard work that's put in, and social media probably makes that worse and kills a lot more people's dreams or creates a lot more false dreams for people just because of that. So at what point did you break away from being in the shop or working with machines to managing or traveling, things like that?
It's a great question. So within each of the 3 major places I worked at, I was in charge of something. So I would even, when I was being interviewed, I would accept even a lower wage with a guarantee of a certain wage after I proved myself, because I knew that I could do it. And I wanted to get this, whatever said job it was, right? So if a wage was 60K or 80K or whatever, I would come in at 40 and say, within 6 months, if I've proven myself, take me to this number, right? I'm willing to do it. So at every facility, I managed something. I managed a department, ended up managing the woodworking facility, and then moving in that job. So let's say around year 11 at this point of my 12-year
whole career
manufacturing, from being in front of machines. About year 10 or 11 was when I transitioned to the design side of things. So I was designing kitchens at this point and helping the people on the factory floor that I was just running. And then I ended up becoming the right-hand man of the owner of the facility, of the company. And we were designing kitchens. If let's say that you wanted a kitchen designed, the owner would be sitting with you and you would just talk about it. And while you're talking about it, I would be sitting here designing it, and you'd have a monitor. So in real time, you could see your kitchen being designed right in front of you. That's how good we got at it, right?
And I imagine that was much more rewarding than maybe being in the shop or in being with machines, or did you prefer that more?
It was new for me. So anything new, I'm going to dive into wholeheartedly. But I left that position not quickly, but fairly quickly, because I did miss the machines, and I went back to machining.
Really? Okay.
I did. So I did enjoy the design part, but you know what comes with more money? More stress.
Right.
And there's got to be a balance. And when you're working with people with that much money, if their kitchen's not perfect, even if it's the install crew that's made a mistake, or the staining crew, or whatever part of this installation doesn't go well based on this person's expectations, not even reality, but expectations, came with a lot of stress. So I ended up moving. That company actually has its own unique history where the owner did some poor things and they ended up shutting it down.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's a whole story in that as well. But once that happened, my wife and I decided that we were going to move to Florida, and she was 6 months pregnant with my daughter at this time. I didn't have a guaranteed job, a place to live. Nothing was guaranteed. We just knew we wanted to live in summer and near the beach. So we do have a couple of cousins down here. We put whatever money we had into a U-Haul, moved everything down here, and I got hired by 3 companies within 24 hours. Again, I'm very confident in my skill set of machining. I went right back to what I knew I was good at. So I became the R&D for a company here locally called Air Turbine Technology, and I worked for them for about 10 years. And that's where I transitioned truly from the machinist side of things to the consulting sales side of things, and I understood about how to do micro machining at really high RPM. And that position, I ended up becoming vice president of that company. That position sent me to 30, 40 different countries, and my job role was to understand how business is done in each individual country, because every country is different, and then apply this technology and create a distribution center for this technology, but also while educating people on how it actually works, so it would be successful in every country. Some countries get it right away. Some people have no idea how this stuff works. So my job was a consulting, sales, distributorship position, and that's why I think currently in the role that I'm in, when I get to speak to people on the manufacturing side of things and I get to learn from them as well, I apply a lot of this. Well, Germany is different from Japan, who's different from Switzerland, who's different from Thailand, who's different from the Philippines, who's different from Mexico, who's different from the US and England, and we must speak to each other in the ways that we feel comfortable to allow them to be authentically who they are. Manufacturing is the same way, and people coming from these different communities around the world have taught me so much. And one thing I've learned from all these travels is not to take myself and force my traditions, my culture, my history into their situation, but allow them to educate me so that I can be a better version of myself in their country and absorb as much information as I can, which allows them to go, wow, this American really enjoys our culture. We're giving him our food, showing him our customs, showing our clothes. He's asking questions about our religions and our beliefs and our history. And I think that's really important to do as we travel around as well. So that was the transition.
And before that, did you travel, or was this the first time you really got to see the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first time I ever traveled, I remember this vividly, was 2006. What was I, about 26 years old, 27 years old, 28 years old, somewhere around there. And I had first met my now wife, and she took me to Mexico. That's where she's from. That's where her family's from. I had been on a plane one other time for this. So anytime I've ever been in between jobs, I have a couple of buddies that do what's called metal spray. And it's this really difficult job where you spray metal, and there's a whole lot more to it than I'm about to describe.
Sounds
but
super dangerous.
You spray metal inside of these boilers, and they shut down boilers when the metal gets thin, because the water cooling of the boiler thins out the walls. The heat flakes off the metal, and you have to respray it. So I would always call them when I was, a week or two in between jobs, because the money is great. The job, it's tough. So I would call them. Anyway, so I went on one job with them that took me on a flight to Louisiana. But other
that was
than
your first flight?
That was my first real flight.
So
and
you never even really left the state?
No. Other than Carolina to visit my grandparents, like I said...
Till 26.
My college was in Maryland, so I always tell people I grew up in Maryland, D.C., Virginia.
So you'd been around a little bit before
little bit for soccer tournaments. I'd been to Jersey for a weekend for a soccer tournament where we didn't really leave the soccer field, right? So a little bit of that Georgia, this kind of stuff. But as far as flights, that was my first, and my first real flight was about 26, 7 years old when I went to Mexico. And I didn't really travel other than with her until I reached this consulting job. And for me, it was a dream come true, because I had always wanted to see the world, and I now got to see the world with doing something I loved, also being of service to help people, and it was somebody else's money and not mine to see the world, right? So for me, it was a perfect combination. It was a perfect storm. So I loved that job, yeah.
Okay, so this is a question I've had. I want to get it out before I forget. Going on YouTube, and Ben and I think the other day we were watching a machine make. It was like a paper clip, and it had, it was like a circle, and it has all these little parts going in to bend it. Who manufactures the manufacturers? Like, who manufactures
like these machines?
Is there an endless chain of people that just manufacture for the machines? Like that's kind of a thought that I had.
Okay, so I'm going to answer this two ways, and I think this really goes out to an audience that's curious, just like Christian, by the way, about how this is all done. So somebody has to make these machines. The machine that's bending the paperclip, somebody has to make that.
And what machine makes that machine, though?
Well, people make those machines. So I've done a ton of factory tours at these main facilities. I've done, Yazda, which is discussionably the highest precision machine on the planet, but there's other great ones out there. I've done Matsura, Kitamura, two more really fancy. So they have all these names, right? And the two, I would say, the two highest countries that we look at as leaders in creating this technology would be Germany and Japan. Now, there's other great discussions for Switzerland and Korea and Taiwan and, a lot of other countries that are out there making these machines, Czech Republic, Poland. But I think there's a standard that Germany and Japan have set that are just the highest quality. You're investing in something important, but it's made by humans. I'll even show you a couple of videos we did, after this podcast, where it's a walkthrough so you can see how these things, we're talking 100-year-old educated, like hand scraping style. And what I mean by that is, if you have two parts of a machine, and I'm going to try and describe this as vividly as possible for those who are listening on Spotify instead of watching on YouTube, right? So you have two parts of a machine. Each piece is very heavy, and these are castings, right? So you've molded a casting at some point along the way. So you have two very, very heavy. You could almost even picture it like this, even though this table down here is made of steel, the bottom part, just a different material, but imagine it being a huge hunk of it. And these two pieces need to go together, one on top of the other, in order to create a full machine, right? Imagine that.
Yeah, like two halves.
Yeah, like two halves. So if you do that and you don't do it correctly, what you have to do is put shims in there, and the shims will kind of correct the offset of the underneath material bowing because of the weight of the top material, right? So the machines who are putting out as many machines as they can per month are kind of shimming it like that. Whereas the machines that are going to last you 20, 30, 40 years and still keep the same tolerances, they'll take that part back off, and they have some sort of like goo or something on there where you can see the imperfections and where it's been bent, and they'll actually take a piece of metal and hand scrape it.
Wow.
And they'll do it over and over again until all imperfections have been removed based on the change that's happened from putting these two parts together. So people are creating these machines, but these machines that you're talking about in combination from all the different styles, you have vertical ones, you have horizontal ones, you have turning centers that are also considered in that world. You have 5-axis, which allows you to do more. There's more operations. You have 18. There's some machines that have so many operations done in one place. You can literally make a part that would take 10 machines and do it on one machine. So there are people creating the original machine, but once those machines are made, they're making every single part on this planet, our microphones, our medical parts, our aerospace parts, everything that people take for granted regularly goes through. And yes, people around the world in every country, I would make the discussion that the most stable economies in the world right now are based on or founded on manufacturing. And those who don't focus on manufacturing have a bit more chaos in their economy. So manufacturing is so incredibly important to everyone. When I mentioned the Japan and the Germany, you can also look at their economies and see what their economies are like, right? And the balance that they have within it. So it is important that we are making things, but it's also important for our households, our livelihoods, our families, and even our local communities and national governments.
So shifting gears into travel, I mean, you've been a lot of places. I'm not going to ask you what your favorite spot is.
Everyone
that's
does,
probably
though.
Pretty hard. But just give me, rattle off some spots that you love to travel to. Because somebody like me, I haven't really been anywhere other than here, Florida. It's beautiful. From Ohio, haven't traveled. I'm 27, haven't really traveled anywhere, kind of like you when you were younger. Mm-hmm. So what are just some of your top spots?
Well, firstly, let me just say we are looking for a cameraman. How affordable are you? Are you looking to travel? I mean, don't let me steal you from podcast junkies. Ben might be jealous, but anyway, it's really a great question. Do you like cities more? Do you like nature more? What are you into, Christian?
It really depends on how I wake up in the morning.
Okay.
Some days it's a city. I mean, right now I like the city because I'm on the younger side. I like city. Ohio is very rural. There's a lot of woods there. I grew up kind of doing that stuff. So I would say more city, but I'd love to see, Thailand or somewhere very tropical like that, or like a rainforest. I think that would be beautiful too. So I can't really give you a straight answer on that.
It's straight enough. I can give you 2 top 5s, really. So if you were going to pick a place, there's lots of great choices for cities. I think some of our favorite cities that I've traveled to through work and through pleasure would be somewhat stereotypical, really. I mean, London's a great city. If we're going to go international, so London, Munich is absolutely gorgeous.
Okay.
A couple of wonderful cities in Switzerland as well. Singapore is on the top of the list. Singapore's in fact, their whole country is pretty much a city because it's so small. It's a tiny place, but they do so much. Seoul, Korea, absolutely gorgeous. Tokyo, Japan, it's stunning. And these are, wonderful cities within our own country. Since you mentioned Ohio and being in Florida now, I could give or take, but I think also stereotypical. Chicago's great for a culinary experience. People love that city. New York definitely has the good there if you're interested in seeing all the lights and the fame. San Francisco was my favorite city for the longest time, but it's kind of deteriorated over the last few years. Sorry for everyone in San Francisco if I'm offending you. I don't mean to. But we have great cities here as well. For country, so just as a general rule of navigation, Iceland is fantastic. Going to Reykjavik, the city there is small, but you get a city, and the waterfalls there are majestic. I mean, absolutely glorious. Norway, I just went to, again, waterfalls out the kazoo. You know what I mean? Like just gorgeous natural living and laid back. Scotland, where a lot of my heritage comes from. Our family loves that. We found Gunn Castle. We posted it on Google as well. It was the first picture ever posted on Google. Was my daughter in front of the destroyed Gunn Castle. Huge fan of Bali in Indonesia. I do plan to retire there at some point. I mean, water, mountains,
so you could
waterfalls.
say that's your favorite. You could pretty much
for lifestyle and I think all around. But again, I love Mexico as well. I mean, what Mexico has to offer in its history and its food and its culture. I mean, put that on the list also. And then everyone can pick their own island. The Philippines, I think, has 7,000 islands. Pick one for yourself. Indonesia is very similar. There's so many thousands of islands. Some people don't want to be remote, and some do. And I haven't seen the whole world. I haven't done anything in Africa, and I really, really want to.
Africa would be cool.
All of it. I would. If a dream of mine could come true, I'd love to backpack the Amazon and the Congo, but I'd also like to backpack the whole of Africa and take years to do it and just walk around the whole thing. I think the maps, the size of Africa doesn't do the true justice of the size of Africa. The map shrinks it down a little bit, but I think it's massive, and I'd love to learn more about that as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, shifting gears again, how did you get to this point? Because you seem like you love what you do. It's really cool. I still don't fully understand how everything works in your life, but how did you get to this point of going around like that? I know you kind of gave us some background, but what do you do now? Can you talk about that?
You want to know about the media side of things, or how I got to finding a pretty good balance of my life and pursuit of something that brings in financial resources as well as happiness?
Definitely both, but you could start with the, I think, second one.
Yeah, okay, it's a good question. And it's a topic I don't talk about so often because we talk about manufacturing the most, right? We're pushing it. Labor shortage, national security threat, all these things. We're talking about manufacturing. But I have been for about 15 years now, and I do thank my family for this as well. And let me just go back a little bit. I was a very, very angry teenager. We didn't have a gang, but the police classified it as such, and we did cause a lot of trouble. I've had several friends either hurt, injured, killed, locked up, and there was a lot of disparity at that point in my life. In my early 20s, my house was burnt down. My nephew died at a young age. Viral pneumonia suffocated me in the hospital. And there's story upon story from about 20 to 25 where it's just constant tests of life and just misery all the time. And chasing happiness came from the bottom of a bottle and going to a club and dancing. And it wasn't real happiness. It was temporary happiness. And where could I find the joy that I could fill my cup, but also share with others? So I started doing a ton of research. And I don't want to get too much into political versus spiritual versus religion, because everyone has their own choice and their own ways that they find the resources to help them be happy. And I don't want to take away from anyone who has their own experiences. For me, I really started through travel, connecting with nature and the elements that were all around me. So earth, wind, fire, water, soul. I started researching these shamans and gurus throughout India and Asia and the Buddhists and these cultures that seem to value your internal self more than your external self, and how to truly find love when you look in the mirror, despite everything else that's going on, and love yourself. And I think that's important, because when we do, the world reflects that and becomes our reality. Whatever we feel on the inside, our reality reflects that. So I started pursuing the natural side of things. And up until that point, I was pursuing things I thought made me happy and financial resources that I thought would help me do more things. I opened a natural healing company. I studied herbs, started meditating a ton, tried different styles of meditation, including sun gazing, which is a little less popular, but it worked really well in my life. And it literally is what it sounds like. You stare at the sun for a certain amount of time. And if you want to know more about that, we can talk about that later. But I started applying this style of activity to my life, and in doing so, and again, my family, I think, was a big part of this, because they've always been very patient with me. I'm a Scorpio by birth. I'm very temperamental. I can lose my peace in a bad way. I typically have a long fuse, but when it's gone, no one around me is safe, like a Tasmanian devil. I hurt a lot of people in my life, and I think karma was the reason why I took on a lot of that early 20s pressure. Was what I had given out had decided to come back to me, and it came back to me hard. So in pursuit of finding the love within myself, I realized that service was my greatest happiness, was helping people. So I started a natural healing company, a tea company, and in the beginning, about almost 100% of those profits ended up going to about 14 different charities. We went around the country finding the ones where 90+% of donations went to the charity itself, instead of going to some of the other things that it could go to, right? Because there's a lot of charities out there that aren't, in my opinion, doing it correctly. So we researched all that. I visited them. We went in person. My daughter and I, when she was young, you can even find it on YouTube now, we're feeding the homeless and doing things like this. And that joy and that love of service, like I said, when you create it internally, it manifests externally. And when COVID hit, and I was enjoying my job, don't get me wrong, I was enjoying my job, but there was another step I wanted to pursue, which is currently where I am, helping an industry that I love through the media side of things. When COVID hit, I took my family, even though my daughter did not like this choice whatsoever. I threw everything into storage. I quit all my jobs and went backpacking through Mexico. And again, connected to that spirit, that energy, that self-love. Instead, we got away from the fear, the anxiety, the worry that everyone was a part of. We removed ourselves from it. And in doing so, a lot of companies reached out to me because they wanted me to come work for them in one format or another, whether it be sales or machining or some of the other attributes, because I've written a couple of books at this point, been on magazines, all that kind of stuff. They wanted me in one form or another, and MTD reached out, which is our microphones right here, right now, thanks to you. And they were the right choice for me, and currently they still are. At some point, I think I'd like to do more keynote public speaking, inspirational type stuff, and I think we have a trip planned real soon to go down under that might help with some of that. But currently, this is the perfect path of helping an industry, helping people, financially being rewarding as well. But ultimately, the most important thing is that we do the things that we love, so we never feel like we're working. And as cliche as can be, but we never feel like we're working. Even the stressful days, it's normal, but it passes so quickly because the joy supersedes it at all times,
Hi everybody, Amy Teal, CEO and co-founder of Shop Floor Coffee, proudly a women-owned business that's supporting the manufacturing community.
Mike Franz, CIO, co-founder of Shop Floor Coffee. Thanks everybody for tuning in to check us out. Amy, tell us a little bit about Shop Floor Coffee.
So we're here to give back to the manufacturing community through purchases of coffee. So every purchase you make, we donate a portion of those proceeds back to help workforce development initiatives.
We can't tell you how much it means to us to help support the great manufacturing community. We've been involved with it for like 20 years, and we know there's issues around finding good people, finding people that really want to be involved in the industry, and we want to start by giving back to that, giving back to the programs, getting kids involved with these awesome programs. There's robotics, there's computer software, there's so many cool things involved with the industry that people just aren't aware of. We want to help raise that awareness by giving back in a little way that we can.
And really, we came up with the idea of Shop Floor Coffee because there are two complaints on a shop floor. It's the coffee and the toilet paper. We can't do anything about the toilet paper, but we can help you get better tasting coffee on your shop floor while helping the community. So shopfloorcoffee.com, come visit us and support the community.
100%. Now, my next question was what's next for you, but I think you kind of already answered that. So final question, and I'm going to flip it on you because you always ask this to your guests. What would you tell that young kid that's getting in, whether it's a boy or girl, getting into manufacturing, what would you tell them as far as advice on getting into it, what to do? I know that's kind of a broad question, but I think you have a good answer for that.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. We try to give good answers on here. So if you are knowledgeable and know that you like tinkering, working on go-karts, working on motorcycles, cars, things like that, I would highly recommend going into a trade school. Currently, trade schools have a better ROI than universities, and that's over the lifetime of a career. Just how much universities cost these days versus the majority of the salaries that you get from the majority of positions. Now, don't get me wrong, universities are great for a lot of people. They're necessary for things, doctors, lawyers, dentists, you have to go to universities. But the ROI on trades, if you're an interested person to know more about it, you can have companies pay for your school to go to trades. A lot of these companies, there's a high school in upstate New York that I absolutely love. They have over 300 students in their STEM program, and STEM is, mathematics and engineering and science and technology.
And that's a trade.
And it's a group of options in the trades that you can go into, whether you want to do, civil engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, whether you want to be a welder or you want to do be an electrician or a plumber. These are all trades, and there's a huge skill gap in these trades. So you can actually, right out of high school, go into one of these companies. They'll pay for you to go to school, because a lot of companies out there would rather hire someone young, thirsty, and willing to learn and be trained than to hire someone they have to retrain and adapt to a situation, because every shop is a little bit different. If somebody in high school knew that they could make $20 an hour, $30 an hour straight out of school with raises up to 6 figures in the manufacturing world, this whole dull, dirty, dangerous, you don't make a lot of money in it, it doesn't really exist. There's certainly examples on all sides of, well, what about this guy over here making $12 an hour at the mom and pop shop? Well,
right.
It exists, sure.
And that's how I felt when I was younger. My parents, oh, you could go to a trade school, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'm like, I don't want to be a plumber.
Right.
I don't want to be the handyman. You know what I mean? But I think, did you say you could go to school for trade school for civil engineering?
So there are styles of engineering that you can do at trade schools, but I don't think that you can, leave it in the comments if I'm incorrect here. I don't believe that the trades will offer you a civil engineering degree, but they will offer you lots of different style degrees in the engineering world. So machine shop type stuff will be in the trades. And again, through being poor in classroom, I don't have a trades degree either. So all of mine really does come from hard work and learning on the job and striving to be excellent at whatever I did.
But that was also before a time that that was probably as available as it is now. It's probably becoming more popular, correct? Trade schools?
That's a really great question.
Has to be, right?
I sure hope so. We're preaching about it enough. We're yelling about it. Gosh, I hope so. I don't know. I was offered to go to the trade school. My local community college did one. And my first company, that Hoover and Strong Precious Metals place, they said, it's like a 3-year program. They would pay 50% of it. I would get all my NIMS cards. We call it NIMS card certificates, which allows you to say, this is what I can do. I went to school for this. And I ended up never going. So back in 2002, it was an option. But I'd like to believe it's more popular now. I don't know if that's true or not.
I think it is.
We'll
just go with that.
Yeah, I hope you're right.
Go with that. All right. Well, I think that's everything. I still have a lot more questions, but we'll ask those off camera.
Do we need to do this again sometime?
We might have to. So, very cool. I really appreciate your time, and maybe we could have some of this here.
Yeah, absolutely, Christian. Thank you for asking the questions. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. Honestly, it's not every day I get to share, because most of the time I'm doing the interviewing. And although I think I have a fascinating story, and it's a story that I think would inspire people, oftentimes I keep it to myself, and maybe I shouldn't. So your willingness to do what we're doing right now means the world to me. And plus it kind of double dips into now people know who you are every time I talk to Christian behind the camera, right? Now we know we have a face to go with the voice, right?
Right. Yeah, 100%.
So I know you're not a big drinker. We do have a delicious Clase Azul here. I believe it's a Reposado. Wonderful choice, by the way. This is your choice.
Absolutely. Every time, tequila.
And I know you're not a huge drinker, but do you have a cheers or a toast that you go to, or should I do one of mine?
I'm just going to cheers to the Gunn show. Oh. It's brought me a lot of joy, a lot of fun here. I love doing it, so let's just cheers to that.
I love that. Nothing else needs to be said, I don't think. That's absolutely what I'd love to cheers to. For everyone watching, thank you so much. We absolutely appreciate you. This is my buddy Christian. Ben is behind the scenes today. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, worries, concerns, anything that you'd like to leave in the comment section, I will make sure to watch this on YouTube in the comment section to answer any questions that might come up. Christian, we might have to do this again. There's so much more we can do. And we burnt through about 50 minutes, 60 minutes in no time. We could probably easily double this. So thank you all for watching. We know how important time is. It's the one thing we can never get back. So if you've decided to spend it with Christian and I today, we do absolutely appreciate you. Christian, one more time, thank you so much, my friend.